Let me start with a real finance question. A family contacts the school and says, "We made a payment of $475. The student still has an outstanding balance. Where did our money go?" The bursar should not have to search through bank files, invoices, and spreadsheets separately. They should be able to answer that question from one connected financial record. This is Tendai Monde's student account. The school has invoiced a total of $2,450. It has received $970 in payments. The account still has $1,480 outstanding, spread across 5 invoices. One of the recorded payments is the $475 payment the family is asking about. At this point, we know the school received money, but we do not yet know how that specific payment affected the account. Before following the transaction, we need to understand the rule Makronexus was instructed to follow when the money arrived. This is Tendai's payment profile. Think of this as the connection between the student's identity and the school's collection process. It gives the student a stable, masked bank reference. When that reference appears on a bank statement, Makronexus can identify which student the payment belongs to, without relying on someone manually interpreting a narration field. The profile is active and primary. Its reference ends in E9B6. More importantly, this profile contains the rules governing allocation. Tendai's profile uses oldest due first. That means when money arrives, Makronexus first completes the oldest outstanding invoice. Only after that invoice is settled does the remaining amount move to the next invoice. Overpayments are allowed, unapplied credit can be created when necessary, and this profile does not currently require manual review. We now know what the system was supposed to do. The next question is whether the $475 payment actually followed that rule. Let's open the payment itself. It is a $475 bank transfer recorded against Tendai's account using the same stable bank reference from the payment profile. The payment status is completed. The payer name includes the matched bank reference, and the transaction metadata confirms that this payment came through the stable reference bank statement process. Notice that we are not asking staff to remember where the money came from. The payment carries its identification evidence with it. The summary tells us that all $475 was allocated across 2 invoices, with 0 left unallocated. That tells us nothing disappeared. But it still does not tell the parent where the money went. The answer is in the allocations. This is the decisive screen. The $475 payment did not belong to only one invoice. It was distributed according to the oldest due first rule we saw on Tendai's payment profile. The first invoice originally totaled $600. It had already been partially paid and needed only $105 to be completed. Makronexus applied $105 from the new payment, bringing that invoice's outstanding balance to 0 and changing its status to paid. That left $370 from the original $475 payment. Makronexus then moved that remainder to the next oldest invoice. The second invoice also totals $600. The $370 allocation reduced its outstanding balance to $230, so that invoice remains partially paid. Here is the complete answer: $105 plus $370 equals the full $475. The oldest invoice was completed first. The remainder moved to the next invoice. Nothing was lost and nothing remained unallocated. This is why the student can still have an outstanding balance, even though the family made a valid payment. The payment was real. It was simply not large enough to settle every outstanding charge on the account. Allocation explains where the money went. Now, we need to prove the transaction came from the bank and passed the school's controls. The payment was matched using Tendai's stable student reference. It was then verified using the bank statement source and reconciled to a specific statement line and reconciliation batch. The matched bank transaction is also $475, carries the same reference ending in E9B6, identifies Tendai, and is marked as matched. This is an important distinction. We are not merely looking at a payment somebody typed into the system. We can connect the student reference, the bank statement transaction, the recorded payment, and both invoice allocations. We have proved each part individually. Now let's see the whole financial chain in one view. This is finance lineage. Instead of treating the payment, bank transaction, and invoices as isolated documents, Makronexus shows their relationships as one connected financial chain. From this payment, we can follow the records upstream to the payment identity and collection evidence, and downstream into the two invoice allocations. We can switch between upstream, downstream, and full chain views, then inspect individual records without leaving the investigation. This transaction demonstrates something basic payment registers often flatten. A payment is not always connected to only one invoice. Here, one $475 transaction completed one invoice and partially settled another. Makronexus preserves that split as an explicit financial relationship. That means the bursar is not merely seeing that a payment happened. They can see what the payment touched, in what amounts, and in what sequence. The records are connected. The next question is whether every action in that chain is accountable. The payment life cycle records the significant events in sequence. We can see when the payment was recorded, when it was reconciled, when $105 was allocated to the first invoice, when $370 was allocated to the second, and when the payment was verified. Each event identifies the linked record, timestamp, status, amount, and responsible user or process. In the detailed audit view, Makronexus can also expose the accountability reason, request context, exact field changes, and before and after values for audited mutations. For sealed audit events, the system also reports the integrity status of the hash-linked sequence. Let's return to the original question. The family asked, "Where did our $475 go?" Makronexus gives the school a precise answer. The bank reference identified the payment as Tendai's. The payment profile applied the configured oldest due first rule. $105 completed the oldest partially paid invoice. The remaining $370 moved to the next invoice. That second invoice still has $230 outstanding. The full $475 was allocated. $0 were left unexplained. The payment was verified against the bank statement and reconciled to the school's records, and every significant action is connected to an auditable financial trail. That is the power of Makronexus Finance. Not simply, we record invoices and payments, but we can prove where the money came from, why it was allocated that way, where every dollar went, and who was accountable for each step.